Photoshop selections are a wonderful, powerful tool that will help you bring your photographs to the next level if you spend some time perfecting them. We'll start here with the rectangular marquee tool. If you press down on it and hold it, you'll see different shaped marquee tools, the elliptical marquee tool, circle. So with the rectangular marquee tool, if you drag it out, you will get a rectangle of whatever proportions you drag to. I'm going to hit Command D on my Mac to deselect, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag out the rectangular marquee. And now instead of a rectangle that is varying dimensions, varying proportions rather, I get a perfect square every time, so all four sides are the same length. The elliptical marquee tool works the same way. I can drag and get an ellipses of whatever proportions I choose, or I can hold down Shift and get a circle of whatever size I choose. Now, these selection tools are useful when you're selecting, say, a particular part of an image that's not just a single object in an image. Like say I wanted to just grab this little area and do something with it for some reason. That rectangular marquee tool would be really useful, and I could do something like place it somewhere else. Here, let's just do a quick little test with it. I'm going to grab this hand and this flower, and it's a little bit cut off. That's okay. I don't really need them to be perfect what I'm doing. And then I could go Command C, which is copy, up here under Edit, copy. And if I wanted to, I could say paste it onto another picture. And there I have that circle in another layer in this other image, or do whatever else I wanted to do with it. I'm going to deselect again. Under that, you have the lasso tool, and if you press down on that, you'll see the polygonal lasso tool and the magnetic lasso tool. So the lasso tool is a freehand tool. I'm going to zoom in some to use this and move my screen around. I'm going to start at that point of the arrow there, and I could use this to drag. Now this is kind of imperfect, as you can see. There are certain situations where it makes more sense to use this than others, and as Photoshop selection tools get more and more complex, tools like this become used less and less on a regular basis, but are still useful at different times. So let's just round this off so we don't have to do the whole thing, because we do have to get through a bunch of other tools. I just want to show you how these different tools work and then begin to show you how you can apply them. So you would drag it around, and then it would close off the selection between where you started and wherever you finished. The polygonal lasso tool, you kind of click, 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 and then you can use that to draw all kinds of different shapes. The magnetic lasso tool is really interesting. It clings to the edges of whatever you're dragging it along. So you can see as I drag, it's dropping all these little points, and that's helping make the line more precise. So I'm not making this selection perfectly, but this tool is doing a pretty decent job of helping refine my selection as I go. And again, I'm not going to make you sit through me doing this whole thing and trying to do it perfectly, but now you have an idea of what that tool does. Underneath the lasso tool is a set of automatic selection tools. So up here, these selection tools are manual. You're kind of dragging around and telling it where you want those edges to be. the tools that are here have Photoshop doing a lot of the work for you. So this object selection tool is brand new. It was just introduced recently, and it's very interesting. It has a lasso mode and a rectangle mode. Let's start in the rectangle. And I'm just going to grab an area. Let's say I want to get the hand selected, so I'll just make sure that I get the whole hand in that rectangle. I'll give it a minute to do its work. And now it made a pretty decent selection on its own. I see some little areas where it caught the flower, so if I wanted just the hand, I would have to go in and refine that selection. But it did a pretty amazing job of just grabbing that right away. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to drop down to this lasso version. And instead of grabbing just the hand, I'm going to grab the flower and the hand. Oops, I missed a little bit, that's okay. And now when I let it go, it has both of them. And again, I could copy those if I wanted to and just put them somewhere else. Of course, that looks super goofy, but you can see right away that the selection is not terrible. The edges aren't perfect. It's probably not exactly like I'd like it, but it's not awful either. So this is a really exciting new tool to be able to use in Photoshop. When you make a selection in Photoshop, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. There are lots of ways to refine a selection in Photoshop, and that's really important because if you want something to be perfect, it might take a combination of tools to get it there. Deselect again. Underneath the object selection tool is the quick selection tool. And with this tool, I can use my brackets. I'm hitting my right bracket here to make my brush larger, my left bracket here to make the brush smaller. You can also make your brush smaller or larger here and make your brush harder or softer here. When you're selecting things in Photoshop, unless you're selecting like a hard shape, like a picture of a box, for example, and you just want the box, you're probably going to want your brush somewhat softer than all the way up at 100% hardness. So I'm just going to turn my brush down and make it really soft. And 400 is larger than I need, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So that's just the number of pixels that it grabs kind of in one swipe. And if you have it really big and you try to drag it around, it's just going to grab everything. So you want to make it smaller than the object that you're trying to select. The quick selection tool is really great for selecting things that have a range of tones or colors. So all these different tones in the flowers here, it found them pretty well. And in a lot of these tools right away, you have an option to refine your selection right here. So I could go in and grab this little minus tool, zoom in. My brush is too large. I'm going to make it smaller. And now I can go in and deselect. I'll go back in and reselect that. Again, not perfect, definitely needs some refining. You can see all these areas that it didn't get here in this flower. The tones are too close together between the flower here and the green background here. It missed this because there's shadow. It got a little bit of this because it's caught here with the fingernail, and the tones are similar. So it definitely still needs some refining, but we're off to a pretty decent start. I'm going to deselect that and zoom back out. And now we're going to go down to the Magic Wand tool. The Magic Wand tool is better for kind of smaller areas and areas with fewer tones. But let's see how it does, just dragging it around. So see, it's having a hard time getting a good selection because there's this big drop off here between the shadows and the highlights on this hand. But it's still not terrible. I mean, it did a really good job with the edges, but this tool is more magic with some objects than others.